Hey guys, what is going on? It is me, BakuriBox12 here, and welcome back to another Realm of the Mad God Dungeon Guide video. I'm coming at you with sort of a double feature today. We're going to be looking at both the Puppet Master's Theater from the Godlands Leviathan and its follow-up Court of Oryx dungeon, the Puppet Master's Encore. The Puppet Theater's difficulty and duration is comparable to that of a Mad Lab, give or take. Although when it comes to soloing, if you lack sufficient DPS on the boss, let's just say things may get crowded, so I wouldn't suggest it. But in a standard group, it's a very middle-of-the-road location that I'm sure you'll be able to master in no time. The theater is made up of many different tightly packed rooms, separated by breakable walls like the ones found in the snake pit, with hardwood floor panels, carpets, candles, and blood. I guess someone didn't memorize their lines. And of course, the enemies are all puppet-like minions modeled after about half the character roster, each adopting a stiff but unique wooden exterior. They also have these really freaky looking eyes. While it's certainly not an enormous dungeon by any stretch, its moderate size can lead you into a few dead ends here and there, but lucky for us, there are a few signs that can let us know when we need to turn around. Anytime you enter one of these circular rooms, a room containing archer puppets, or a room that has more priest and rogue puppets than normal is a surefire way of knowing you're at a dead end, so you can turn around and save yourself the time. When it comes to clearing the dungeon, you'll see me employ a classic time-old strategy where I hang outside of a room and lay into the enemies that follow me out. This can be done on any character, but Wizard is my class of choice, as its high DPS makes short work of all the puppets, the staff can curve around corners, enemies will often sit still for a moment, setting up perfect spell bomb opportunities, and the boss in particular has a phase that rewards those with long range. First up is the Priest Puppet. It has a basic linear shot with 75 damage and will periodically heal itself for 100 HP, although it should be noted that it can only heal itself and not other enemies until we get to the boss. The Rogue Puppet is pretty easy but sneaky as well. It goes invisible every 5 seconds and can be hard to detect, but you can see where it's shooting from and position yourself accordingly. The Paladin Puppet is more aggressive, chasing nearby players with a 110 damage blue shot and occasionally buffing itself to heal 175 health back about every half second. This should pose no problems, however, as most of the enemies only have about 1000 HP to begin with, so they can all be taken out rather quickly. And so long as you strafe left and right while fighting it, you won't be getting hit. The Warrior Puppet behaves similarly to this, with a single shot of identical damage, but it chooses to wander around the room rather than give chase. And every now and then, it'll stop to armor itself and fire a line of berserk shots as if it was using a Helm of the Juggernaut. But at our range, we can just step out of the way, no problem. The Trickster Puppet also kind of meanders about, with an 85 damage attack and will send out its own decoy to try and fool you. And while it does have its own health bar and projectile, it can actually hurt you, so you can ignore this one if you want. The Mystic Puppet can be a tad wily at close range, with its blue pet stasis star and wavy purple bullet, but they don't travel very far and can be easily dodged like everything else by simply moving off to the side. The Night Puppets are quite a deal more threatening, with much faster movement than the others, and an armor-breaking 110 Augmer Bash. It goes without saying that you'll need to keep back. Not a hard thing to do, mind you, but their insistence on giving you a hug is sure to surprise you at some point. The Sorcerer Puppet is a lot like the Trickster in its movement and damage. However, instead of using chain lightning from its scepter, it throws down a red puppet bomb with 30,000 health that explodes after about 3 seconds into 10 65 damage shots. So don't sit on it, dodge the explosion, and take out the sorcerer as normal. But the Archer Puppets are the deadliest of all, holding a powerful slowing triple shot that makes it all the more difficult to avoid the lethal 125 paralyze attack. If you get caught by one of these and have too many surrounding minions, you may not be able to survive. But thankfully, as stated earlier, when you see archers, it means you're about to hit a dead end, so you can turn yourself around and avoid the conflict entirely. Before getting into the main boss, there is a treasure room that you can stumble upon, signified by a row of candelabra on the left and right walls, and a T-shaped carpet in the middle. At the top, you'll find the Oryx Puppet waiting for you. Being modeled after the final boss himself, our wooden copycat here borrows a lot of attack styles from Oryx. Its opening spread is quite fast and powerful at 100 damage per shot, but it leaves a good opening to wade through at a far distance. No more than 4 seconds into this phase, red minion puppets are spawned one by one until there are 3 occupying the screen at one time. Once again, distance is key here. Their 55 damage triple slowing star attack can get the best of you if you make a wrong turn. Try to push them around by moving in their direction while still baiting their shots away. It's important to clear them out as soon as you can too, because the Oryx Puppet only sits there for a limited time while he's invulnerable. I want to say this takes around 6 to 8 seconds before he enters phase 2, involving involving an erratic, unpredictable movement and a constant hurling of grenades into the air, tracking your position. Since the grenade follows you, you always want to be moving to a new location. There is a big white bullet that comes out semi-often, but it's hardly a threat. Not very hard to anticipate. Your priority here is to not stand in one spot for too long, or back up into a spot you were already in a moment ago. When pushed to a very low amount of health, it'll enter its final artifact phase, where it'll surround itself with rather familiar-looking blue artifacts that can't be killed but do block your shots. The hardest part here is dodging the radial burst of white bullets alongside the artifact's triple shot, but you'd be surprised at how many openings they give you. He'll then give out one last war cry before dying and dropping his loot. I typically find at least one treasure room when doing a theater, so it's definitely worth it to look for one. The main boss room is similar, but is much larger and is covered in a giant carpet, with the Puppet Master at the very top. When you get within range, he'll activate with his whimsical opening dialogue before hobbling on over to the middle. His first phase is an easy one. He stands perfectly still, making him a sitting duck for spell bombs, firing purple bullets in 4 directions that slowly open up into oval shapes. Shortly after, he'll chase you with a slowing green attack that you can evade by either circling or simply pulling him around the room. After losing about a quarter of his health, Phase 2 will begin with a Puppet Knight and Wizard coming your way, and a priest that circles while healing the Puppet Master. Now, we know how the Knights operate, but the Wizards are new. They behave as if they're carrying a staff of extreme prejudice, bursting their attacks outward, but both of them will fall prey to you by simply walking into your attacks. It's advised to get this done quickly so you can take out the priest to prevent it from healing. Meanwhile, the purple shots are back in a spiral formation this time, but still move plenty slow to maneuver between. At half health, the infamous clone phase will take effect, with the Puppet Master disguising himself amongst 5 different copies, all behaving the same. The only way to identify him from the crowd is to look for the blue shield above his head. All while you have to dodge the clones moving in random directions alongside scattered blue bullets and green slowing triple shots that can make escape even less likely. This is unquestionably the hardest part of the fight, and if you're on a melee, forget it. It's borderline impossible to get in there without suffering some kind of damage or waiting an obtuse amount of time to get a proper opening. It's the #1 reason why I bring Wizard. You can choose to defeat the clones one by one to reveal the original, but each time one dies, it'll spawn a rogue and assassin puppet along with yellow paralyzed shots, adding to the chaos. Unless you don't mind having more to do and you really can't get a good read on the original, this is an option, although I wouldn't recommend it. It'll probably happen in a public one though, so you'll definitely see it at some point. Best case scenario, the real Puppet Master will be close to one of the sides with minimal clones nearby to deter you. But aside from that, you're just gonna have to feel this one out. Run in when the coast is clear and get out before the slows get you. When enough damage is dealt, he'll return to the top of the room, the clones will vanish, and the purple shot pattern from Phase 1 will come back, with a fresh batch of Wizard, Knight, and Priest puppets that respawn about every 5 seconds. Since elements from the whole fight are being combined here, the challenge comes from first clearing out the puppets in time so that you can land hits on the boss, while still dodging the boss's attacks before the puppet minions come back out and restart the whole cycle. This is the part that I was talking about that makes low-level soloing an unlikely possibility. But even with 1 or 2 other players of similar caliber, you'll be fine. When you have the proper damage, it's actually quite easy. Both the Oryx Puppet and Puppet Master have an identical loot table, with 1 guaranteed attack potion, making this your primary source alongside the Manor of Immortals, a couple of skins, and 2 white bags. One being the Prism of Dancing Swords, giving tricksters 2 decoys, and the Harlequin armor with an emphasis on mana. Pretty good. Still don't have one. Overall, it's a decent dungeon with a unique aesthetic. I see no need to pass these up, especially if you're in need of attack. However, the Puppet Master isn't finished. Turns out he wanted a second chance to redeem himself. Enter the Puppet Master's Encore, a Court of Oryx dungeon where we get his rematch. If you saw my Nidarian Reef guide, then you should know all about how the Court of Oryx works. But if not, check it out if you need the information. The battle takes place in a big checkerboard-like room where the new Puppet Master waits you in the middle with a new black and white design. Pretty sweet. But remember, as a Court of Oryx dungeon, the Encore is significantly more difficult than the theater, so tread lightly. He'll kick things off with more dialogue as he tosses 4 inactive puppet minions in the 4 corners around him, but we'll talk more about those in a bit. After glowing, 8 green pet stasis bullets will fly out at a continuous rapid rate, with a purple dazing cursed blast attack that homes in on your general location. Stand back far enough to anticipate these attacks and keep your attention on the boss. Like with the original Puppet Master, you want to focus all of your damage as consistently as you can, because he never moves from that spot, and the longer it takes for you to deal that sufficient damage, the more dodging you're gonna have to do. Shortly into Phase 1, he'll release these large large and powerful blue shot waves at the north and south poles of the room, requiring some snappy dodging at close range. For me, the trickiest part has always been that cursed blast attack. Since it's on kind of a delay, it'll sit there for a moment and then fly towards you. In phase 2, those green and purple shots will pick back up, but the Puppet Master will become invulnerable to summon his first minion, the Huntress Puppet. It comes after you with an 80 damage double bow and throws down these Encore traps every so often. I like to pull her around the room counterclockwise, so that way I can subtly adjust my position to the right when the arrows are about to hit me, and I'll be moving in the same rotation as the green pet stasis. So I have this organic flow to my movement that allows me to dodge both attacks. When it reaches half health, however, it can get quite dangerous. It combines its double bow with a wide-arced black and purple triple shot, each worth 150 armor-piercing damage. Yet again, baiting out the middle shot and moving to the right in quick succession is my strategy of choice. You can even back up far to heal since she doesn't move any faster. Just be mindful of the Encore traps. They release a slowing attack when you get within about 2 tiles of range. It's wise to intentionally activate them to prevent any future accidents. When she's all taken care of, the Puppet Master will reactivate his vulnerability with a green burst attack and 3 blue shots fired at you. After this, the Trickster Puppet will awaken and summon a small army of approximately 4 decoys that he'll replace should any of them be killed. The key here is to always be moving. The real puppet will stand out among the rest because it's more aggressive towards you, plus it has its own bullet types. A purple 150 Spirit Dagger shot, 4 thin gray slashes, and a 150 red grenade. Archer is my favorite class to bring for a number of reasons, one of which is the ability to pierce through any decoys that may be blocking my attack. Also, if you have a slowing quiver, the Trickster is only immune to stun, paralyze, and stasis, and the decoys are only immune to paralyze. So a Mystic could be used to stasis the decoys and single out the original, and any archers or huntresses can toss out some slows and make the original that much easier to hit. But like with the Huntress, when it approaches just under half health, it'll put out a much more profuse slash attack, albeit at a slower ground speed, so it technically becomes an easier target. The decoys will disappear once the main one is killed, and yet another phase of north and south blue shots, albeit more plentiful, will ensue. Now begins the dreaded second half. Rather than awakening one puppet at a time like before, the Puppet Master relinquishes the remainder of his collection onto us, with his red Puppet of Pain and the purple Puppet of Chaos, a lethal duo. The Puppet of Pain with a crisscross flow of spiky red bleeding shots that hit for 150, and the Puppet of Chaos with an alternating burst of pink hammers and purple confusing stars. And the more damage they take, the faster they'll move around the room, outrunning most players by the end of it. Needless to say, there's a lot to watch out for here, and is undoubtedly the hardest part of this dungeon. I always focus red first. Not only can it be chain paralyzed by archers, but when the Puppet of Chaos goes into rage, you really don't want to have those extra bleeding shots flying around. In groups, you'll often sit in a corner and wait for the puppets to come around and damage them then, but more courageous players will circle the room with the puppets in an attempt to do more damage in a shorter time frame. The way I fight these is very similar to how I fight the Huntress Puppet, rotating the room counterclockwise and strafing to the right at regular intervals. If I ever get confused, rather than panicking and risking more damage, I'll often sit still for a moment and let the puppets pass me, assuming they don't sit directly on top of me, of course. But since I'm almost always hugging the wall, they'll rarely travel close enough to sit on me. This is extra beneficial when they start running faster and try to surprise you around the corner. Unlike the Trickster Puppet, where you constantly needed to be moving, here you want to pick and choose your movements and not do anything too reckless. When the Puppet of Pain enters his rage, nothing really changes aside from his speed, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just get it done and try to fight them one-on-one. The Puppet of Chaos, on the other hand, is something I'd keep my eye on. Since it can't be paralyzed, the best course of action here is to stay in the middle until it comes back around. When you see where it's coming from, you can back up or move forward depending on how close to the wall it is and deal damage respectively. But honestly, once the Puppet of Pain is out of the picture, it becomes way easier to focus on Chaos. And if you're on a knight, you can stun it, which is super helpful. What makes this fight so hard is dodging everything at once, and that's just something that's going to come with practice. With all of his minions taken down, the Puppet Master enters one last frenzy of all his previous attacks. Always be on the move from that red grenade and be mindful of the blue shot waves that cover one quadrant of the room at a time. It's hectic, but doable. Hang back at the wall if you need time to recover. When he's all taken care of, he'll drop a defense, attack, and occasionally a mana potion. The white bags are the prism of dire instability, producing a decoy that explodes, and the 1000 shot with twice the rate of fire of the standard bow. The Encore quickly became one of my favorite boss fights when it came out, and it still holds up really well. It makes great use of bullet hell and pattern-based elements and maintains a thorough difficulty. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. Alright, see ya.